Good afternoon to all. This is Tilak Malli, working as an English lecturer in K.B.N college. Today I would like to analyze the third unit of all the degree courses for the third semester. Generally, third unit consists of two sections. The first section is under the part of interview, and the second section it is under the part of skills. So in the interview part, we have to discuss the lesson Nelson Mandela's interview with Larry King, and under the part of skills, we have to discuss those are the skills that we use in our regular life. The first topic is asking and giving information, and the second topic is agreeing and disagreeing. Then let us see what are the important things that we must discuss with the lesson Nelson Mandela's interview with Larry King. So before going into this lesson, we have to discuss about the two personalities who can appear on this screen. So the first person is Mr. Nelson Mandela, and the second person is Larry King. So what about Mr. Nelson Mandela? Then what about his contribution to his nation? Then what was the role that must have been played by Mr. Larry King in this lesson? Then let us see about Mr. Nelson Mandela. Then about this interview, that in every interview, then there must be two participants. One should act as interviewee, and another one should act as interviewer. So in this lesson, our interviewee is Mr. Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela. So already we know something about Mr. Rolihlahla Nelson Mandela. So Nelson Mandela, he was born in 1918 and he died in 2013. In his life, he was the former and first black president of South Africa. He was an advocate of civil rights who fought against the African racist system of apartheid. I am prepared to die, the struggle is my life, and Long Walk to Freedom are the best works of Nelson Mandela that he must have written books with those titles. The international community honored Mandela with a Nobel Peace Prize, Bharat Ratna, and Nishan-e-Pakistan. So especially we have to remember all the time Mr. Nelson Mandela. Why? Because the person who was against to white Africans apartheid system, he spent most of his valuable life, nearly 27 years in the jail. So in order to bring the freedom for his black race, a man suffered nearly 27 years. A man who struggled in different ways, especially in order to bring only the freedom for the black people. So freedom in the sense means in the South African continent, white people, they have some against views regarding to black people. As a result of that, white people don't allow the black people into the churches, into the schools, into the restaurants in order to take their, education, medical facility, and to worship God. So white Africans applied the apartheid system against the black Africans in the South African continent. As a result of that, Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela, he was against to that apartheid system. It is meant, he said that all the black Africans must be allowed into the churches to offer the prayer to God. All the black Africans must be allowed into the restaurants to have a good breakfast, and all the black Africans must be allowed into the hospitals in order to get good medical facilities. So this is the concept of Mr. Nelson Mandela. So these are the very few valuable words about Mr. Nelson Mandela. So the next participant in the interview was Larry King. So what about Mr. Larry King? Then what the role he played in this interview? Then it is obvious that he must have acted as a interviewer in this part. So already we have introduced the interview of this lesson. So Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela was the interview of this lesson. Interview means the person who answers to different questions, and the interviewer means the person who asks different questions. So these are the two parts we should mind all the time in every interview. So what about the Larry King, a interviewer of this lesson? The interviewer Larry King was an American television and radio host with a live show, Larry King Live, which was popular with more than 50,000 interviews. So it is obviously, then we can say that more than 50,000 interviews were performed by Mr. Larry King as he was the host. So asking different questions, obtaining different answers from different personalities. So one day he said that, so in his lifetime he made 50,000 interviews, but among the 50,000 interviews, he must have influenced with the interviews of two excellent personalities. They are none other than Mother Teresa and Rolihlahla Nelson Mandela. So here we need not to speak about we need not to speak about Mother Teresa. Here, regarding to this lesson, we have to speak about Nelson Mandela. Then what about his contribution? Then what did he do? And how he was against to white Africans apartheid system, how he faced the challenges that must have been created by the white Africans in his lifetime, and when he was sent to that jail, what happened to him in that jail. So these are all the things that we must discuss in this lesson with the title Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela's interview with Larry King. Then let us see then what is the summary of this lesson. So the entire lesson, Nelson Mandela's interview with Larry King, is divided into four parts. So especially we can see four important points through this lesson. What are the four important points in this lesson? They are: number one, struggle for freedom. That is how Mr. Nelson Mandela was dead against to apartheid system. The second thing is Nelson Mandela's imprisonment. Then how long he must have stayed in that jail, And the third part is Nelson Mandela's eventual release from the prison. And the fourth part is Nelson Mandela's election as president. So this interview generally highlights Nelson Mandela's struggle for freedom, that was against apartheid system, and Nelson Mandela's imprisonment, and Nelson Mandela's eventual release from the prison, and the last one is Nelson Mandela's election as president. Then let us see how Mr. Nelson Mandela struggled in order to bring the freedom for his black race against the apartheid system. So Mandela's struggle against apartheid. Mandela joined the African National Congress, that is simply we call that ANC, and became a leading figure in the anti-apartheid movement. Mandela fought against apartheid, a system of white supremacy in South Africa. Under apartheid, restrictive laws governed every aspect of people's lives, dictating where they could live and where they could work and where they could travel, and restricting their access to education, access to health, and access to other social services. So these are the challenges, especially the black people. Then they must have been facing in those days, especially when our Nelson Mandela have not yet become the president of United Nations of America. So the white Africans, they are influencing all other nations. As a result of that, they had been continuing the the apartheid system which was against to the black people. So they are influencing the black people with their cruel rules and with their cruel regulations. So Mandela rose up against the apartheid system and called upon all South Africans to join him or to fight together. So although he was arrested and imprisoned for 27 years for fighting for freedom, Mandela refused to give up the struggle. So here it is very obvious. Nelson Mandela never gave up the fighting with black Africans, especially as a result of that he must have stayed 27 years in that jail. So can you imagine the person's determination staying in a jail nearly 27 years in order to bring the freedom for his black race? So it is obviously we can understand the importance of freedom, especially for the black people while they were being administered by the white Africans in South African continent. And the second part is Mandela's imprisonment. Then when he was sent to the jail, then what happened to him in this jail? Let us see. Mandela went to prison because he opposed South Africa's apartheid laws. So Nelson Mandela, he was dead against to the apartheid laws that was being implemented by South Africans in those days. Many South Africans defied apartheid with the tactics that are included civil disobedience campaigns. Not only with the civil disobedience campaigns, also with the national strikes and boycotts. So Nelson Mandela participated in all these programs and he was sending a message. So he was dead against to the white Africans apartheid system. As a result of that, he was agitating some dharnas and strikes and boycotts. So Nelson Mandela joined the struggle in the 1940 as a young lawyer. So Nelson Mandela then he was joined in the ANC movement. So as a young lawyer, by the 1950s he had become an important leader in the struggle against the apartheid system. So just according to his priority that black Africans must obtain freedom from the white Africans. So Mr. Nelson Mandela was participating in the strikes and boycotts and in some agitations. As a result of that, he was sent to the prison. And next part is and the next one is the South Africa government responded to demands for equality and freedom with repression and violence. So they shot and killed unarmed demonstrators and detained and arrested many others. Its defiance of apartheid had started peacefully, but Mandela now believed that armed struggle was the only way to move forward. So he and others formed an armed resistance group called Spear of the Nation. So nearly Mandela spent 17 months underground trying to gain support for the armed struggle but was arrested in 1962. Then in 1963, Mandela was put on trial for a number of charges. He and 7 of his colleagues were sentenced to life in prison nearly for 27 years in that jail. So a person must have been sent to the jail and make him to stay nearly 27 years in this jail. So how we estimated the determination of Nelson Mandela, why he was fighting nearly 27 years, especially for the freedom of black race in this second part. And let us see the third part of the lesson, that is Mandela's release from the prison. So everyone, when someone must have been sent to the jail, so they must be released on one day. As a result of that, the same things that we can see in the life of Mr. Nelson Mandela's life, that is Mandela's release from the prison. So during the 1950s and early 1960s, Nelson Mandela frequently found himself in the police station cells, court holding cells and prison cells for short periods of time. As his political work made him a target for the apartheid regime, after the banning of the African National Congress in 1960, he went underground in 1961 and became the leader of Umkhonto we the armed wing of the Congress of South African continent. In 1962, he was captured and sentenced to 5 years in prison for leaving the country illegally and inciting a strike. In 1963, he joined other MK leaders in the Rivonia trial, at the end of which he was sentenced to life for sabotage. So he was finally released from the prison in 1990 after over 27 years of unbroken incarceration. 18 of those years were spent on Robben Island. So, in this topic, we must have discussed all the things where Mr. Nelson Mandela spent in that jail and in which type of, areas, especially he was put in the prison. These are the things that we can see in this lesson. So, let us see. After National Congress in 1960, he went underground in 1961 and became the leader of Unkamto Vis Fiji, the armed wing of the Congress. So in 1962, he was captured and sentenced to 5 years in prison for leaving the country illegally and inciting a strike. So in 1963, he joined other MK leaders in the Rivonia trial, at the end of which he was sentenced to life for sabotage. He was finally released from the prison in 1990. So actually, then it is mentioned that 1962 he was captured and sentenced to 5 years in prison, but he released in 1990 after 27 years of unbroken incarceration. So 18 of those years were spent on Robben Island. So among the 27 years, he had to spend 18 of those years were spent on Robben Island. That we must learn from this paragraph. And the last thing is Mandela's election as a president. That is, we can see according to the wonderful book that was authored by Mr. Nelson Mandela, with the title A Long Walk to Freedom. In that long walk to freedom, he revealed that within a few years, apartheid was formally abolished, and on May 10th, 1994, Nelson Mandela became South Africa's first democratically elected president. So, when Mr. Nelson Mandela was elected as the democratically elected president on May 10th in 1994. So, in the amphitheater formed by Union Buildings of Pretoria, Mandela was accompanied by his daughter Jinani Tambo Mbeki and Mr. D. Clark Swan is the first and second deputy presidents. So when the South African continent got independence from the, especially from the white Africans in their continent, so Mr. Nelson Mandela on 10th May 1994, he was sworn as the president of first democratically elected president, and the remaining two members, so with the names Tambo Mbeki and Mr. D. Clark, they sworn in as the first and second deputy presidents. So then, what are the situations that must have been occurred in the in the South African continent? Especially here, we have to discuss some of the things that how Mr. Nelson Mandela then he promised that is in the form Mandela's swearing as the president of South African continent. So while he was becoming the president of the president of South African continent, then on that day, especially Mandela pledged to obey and uphold the constitution and devote to well-being of the people. An array of jets flew above the Union buildings. The smoke formed the colors of the African flag. It was not only a display of precision, but also a display of military loyalty to democracy. So the defense force and police saluted Mandela. Some years ago they had arrested him. Mandela remembered the history of 20th century. So actually when he was being put into the prison, so some of the police arrested him, and they gave him a kind of punishment while Mr. Nelson Mandela was spending his life in that jail for 27 years. But Mandela remembered the history of 20th century while he was taking the power of president to South African continent. He said two things. The most two important things they were. The first one is in the first decade, whites made a system to oppress blacks. That is apartheid system. In the last decade, a new government is formed that gave rights to all. So while he was taking the power, the presidency power in South African continent, he must have remembered two things to the entire world. The first thing is In the first decade, whites made a system to oppress blacks, that is against the apartheid system. And in the last decade, a new government is formed that gave rights to all. So, and finally, and he must have reached his last day. Then, when Mr. Mandela died, then we can see Mandela died in December 2013, but he stands as a symbol for peace, humility, integrity, and respect. Values much needed in many parts of the world today. Though Nelson Mandela died, then we can't see him no more, but he stands as a symbol for peace. He stands as a symbol for peace, and he stands as a symbol of humility. He stands as a symbol for integrity, and he stands as a symbol how someone should respect each other. These are the values much needed in many parts of world today that we must learn from the life of Mr. Nelson Mandela. Then there is a chance some of the important questions may be asked in our end semester examinations. Then let us see what are the important questions. So the first question: why was South Africa isolated by the rest of the world? Why was South Africa isolated by the rest of the world? So the answer is Mandela clearly states that South Africa was isolated by the rest of the world. It was because of the activities of South African people. They were guided by the ablest leaders of South Africa like Oliver Tambo. People's protest against the apartheid put the country away from the other countries. So here we can see the domination of white people against the black people. Then we can see the domination of Britishers while they were administrating our country, India. Then we can see the domination of white Americans while they were, dominating black Americans in United Nations of America. And we can see the dominating character of white Africans while they were dominating black Africans in South African continent. So, as many freedom fighters, as South African continent was producing many freedom fighters, as a result of that, many organizations being as the white people's population of them, as a result of that, they want to make the entire South African continent as the isolated area by the rest of this world. And let us see what is the second question. What is team leadership or collective leadership? What does Mandela say about it? So according to the Mandela, generally Mandela is a human. So he is a man of human concern. So he is democratic in spirit. He is caring and sharing. His organization, African National Congress, respects the collective wisdom. So the people who supported the democratic system always respect the collective wisdom. So they want to everyone to join decision making, working for it, and reaping the fruits. Mandela honored this fully and always. He sincerely believes in individuals contributing to common cause selflessly. So according to this question, we can see Mandela always supported the leadership or the collective team leadership or collective leadership. Why? Because in the team leadership or the collective leadership, we can see especially these are the qualities, especially in a democratic countries. So Mandela honored this fully and always. So Mandela always respected the democratic countries fully and always. So he sincerely believes in democratic countries contributing to common cause selflessly. So there is a chance in democratic governments. The leaders they can work without any selfishness nature. So always we can see Mr. Nelson Mandela supported the democratic countries. So only in the democratic countries we can see only the team leadership or the collective leadership. Then what is the third question? What is Mandela's view on anger and revenge? Or why does Nelson Mandela say that he never got angry? Or why didn't Mandela hate these white captors? So we can see there is a proverb: to err is human, to forgive is divine. To err is human, to forgive is divine. దీన్ని కాస్త తెలుగులో చెప్పుకుంటే మనము తప్పు చేయటం మానవుని యొక్క సహజం, అట్లానే తప్పు చేసిన వారిని క్షమించడం భగవంతుని యొక్క లక్షణం అనేటటువంటి ఒక తెలుగు మీనింగ్ మనం చూడొచ్చు. సో టు ఎర్రర్ ఈజ్ హ్యూమన్, టు ఫర్గివ్ ఈజ్ డివైన్. సో Mandela cultivated such qualities that he never felt angry. Many a time he was sent to the prison in his lifetime. Many a time he faced many struggles from white Africans, and many a time he was beaten by the police in South Africans jails. But he never became furious or he never felt angry. That was the best quality of Mr. Nelson Mandela. That is to be said in the proverb, to err is human, to forgive is divine. Then humans generally they commit some of the mistakes, but God always share his forgiving nature. Forgiving nature towards the humans. So Mandela cultivated such qualities that he never felt angry, nor did he or his fellow prisoners want revenge. Mandela focused on spending each moment to liberate his people. He knew well that they lost a lot of time in prison. They didn't afford to waste a single minute on anger, revenge, or hatred. So they developed a wonderfully positive and philosophical outlook. That is the we must appreciate the best quality of Nelson Mandela in his life. Then let us see what are the remaining topics of this unit. So already I have said that at the starting of this topic that this unit consists of three sections. The first section is under the part of interview part. Then already we must have discussed about Nelson Mandela's interview with Larry King. And in the second part, those are the topics to be covered under the part of skills. So there are two important topics that we must learn. The first topic with the title asking and giving information, and the second topic with the title agreeing and disagreeing. Let us see what is asking and giving information. So sometimes we need to ask a kind of information from somebody. Sometimes we need to give a kind of information to someone. So this is called asking and giving information. But how to make a conversation with someone while we are asking and giving information towards from someone or towards somebody, then we have to be very polite while we are asking and giving information from someone to somebody. So let us see then what is asking and giving information. Then what is asking and giving information? Asking and giving information is one of the important functions of any language. So asking and giving information is one of the important functions of any language. In our day-to-day life, we ask for information and we give information to others. We ask for time, sometimes we ask for things, sometimes we ask for places, sometimes we ask for directions, sometimes we ask for suggestions, etc. And we share the information about the same. We need to be polite when we seek for or share information. So while we are sending the information towards someone or while we are taking the information from someone, we have to pay a kind of a polite way in asking and giving information. That we have to see, we have to learn in this topic. So asking information. So to ask information, we can use either request or question. So sometimes we need to ask about something, then definitely then how to ask others, then we can ask others in two different ways. The first one, either we can make a request or we can form a question about something. So in the case of request, we can take the help of modal auxiliaries. So we know that what are modal auxiliaries. Then there are many modal auxiliaries in English language: shall, should, will, would, can, could, may, might. These are the most important auxiliaries that we should take help of them, such as then we can learn how to make a request in the form of a question. So in order to make a question in the sense of taking information from someone, we have good acquaintance with the modal auxiliaries, then we have to learn how to use them properly. So for example, then can you give me a glass of water? Here can can act as a modal auxiliary verb. Then it is an important modal auxiliary that we can use the word while forming a question when we want to know something from somebody. So see the question once, can you give me a glass of water? So the sentence must have been started with the modal auxiliary, that is can. So the second question, would you mind directing me to go to the railway station? So in this question, then the first the word is would. Here the would can act as a modal auxiliary. So while we are making a kind of request about something, all the time we should use some of the modal auxiliaries. Those are shall, should, will, would, can, could, may, might. With this help of modal auxiliaries in our day-to-day life, we can make a number of requests when we want to know something from someone. So in the case of questions, then what are the things that we should use or we should remember? So in the case of questions, we can take the help of some important WH questions words or some important WH question phrases. So what are the important WH question words and phrases? So here some of the important question words or phrases are given here. Then let us see who, whom, what, when, where, why, which, whose, how much, how many, how long, how far. These are important question words and important question phrases. So with the help of question words, then we can see WH in every word or phrase. Then we can see the letters W and H. As a result of that, they are to be called WH questions or WH question phrases. So who, evaru, whom, everini, what, ఏమిటి, when, ఎప్పుడు, where, ఎక్కడ, why, ఎందుకు, which, ఏది, whose, ఎవరి యొక్క, how, ఎట్లా, how much, ఎంత, how many, ఎన్ని, how long, ఎంత కాలము, how far, ఎంత దూరము. So these are the wonderful question words and WH questions words and WH question phrases. With the help of these words, we can make a number of questions when we want to get something from someone. So let us see the question, who won the game? Who won the game? So in this sentence, WHO, who can act as the WH question word. And in the second sentence, which movie do you want to watch? Which movie do you want to watch? So in the second sentence, which can act as that is a WH question in this sentence. So while we are asking the information, then we have to learn how to use modal auxiliaries, how to use WH question words and WH question phrases. So with the help of the modal auxiliaries and with the help of the WH questions or WH phrases, we can make a number of requests or number of questions when we want to get something from someone. Then let us see what is giving information. When while we are taking the information, sometimes we need to give some information, we need to pass some information towards someone. So then automatically someone may pose a question towards you, or someone make a polite sentence towards you, or someone make a polite question towards you. Then we have to answer like this. Then giving information, then we can say that sure, I would like to give you whatever the information you ask me. So definitely, and certainly, I would like to give you the information. So let me check whether I have the information or not. Of course I can. And no, I don't mind. It's my pleasure. So these are the wonderful phrases that we can use while we are giving the information towards someone. Then let us see, in case we are not in a position to give the information asked for, we can use expressions like, suppose when we don't have certain information or when we don't have particular information, that we can use, these are the some important sentences in that topic. Sorry, I can't answer to your question. Sorry, I don't know what you are asking. Sorry, that is not in my hands. I am afraid I can't answer to my question. I doubt I have that information. I am not sure if I can help you. So these are the wonderful phrases that we can use while we are when we want to give the information, when we are unable to share a particular information towards someone. So these are the important topics that we should learn in asking and giving information. Then let us see the second topic. The second skill is agreeing and disagreeing. So in agreeing and disagreeing, that conversations and communication convey opinions too. Sometimes someone may ask about something, or someone may send a kind of message towards somebody, or someone may reveal something about something towards somebody, or sometimes we need to take a suggestion and advice. So sometimes when we express a kind of idea or thought or our opinions, those are the thoughts, those are the opinions, those are the ideas must be accepted or must not be accepted in our real life. So that is called agreeing and disagreeing. Agreeing means accepting someone or accepting someone's ideas or accepting someone's points or accepting to follow someone. Disagreeing means not to accept to follow someone, not to accept to take others suggestions, not to accept to follow the ideas of someone. So this is called disagreeing. So conversations and communication convey opinions too. Opinions may receive agreement or disagreement from the listeners. Agreeing with someone means to approve their opinion or statement or their action. This language function is essential because it allows speakers to negotiate a meaning and reach agreements while communicating with others. Disagreeing, on the contrary, is the opposite of agreeing because of the prefix dis, which means not or the opposite of. So these are the some important phrases that we must learn while when we want to express our disagreement, when we want to express our agreement. Then what are the best phrases that we can use in order to express our disagreement in our personal life? So let us see. There are 8 important phrases are there. Then let us see. I am not convinced by that idea. It's a kind of disagree. I am not convinced by that idea. It's a kind of disagree. I am not so sure of that. It's a kind of disagree. I think I disagree. It's a kind of disagree. And I disagree. It's a kind of disagree statement. I don't agree. It's also a kind of disagree. I don't think so. It is also a kind of disagree. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think the fate. It's also a kind of disagree. I see what you mean, but it looks a bit empty. It's also a kind of disagree. So in order to express our disagreement about something towards someone, these are the most and best useful phrases that we can use in order to express our disagreement in our personal life. Then what are the sentences or phrases that we can use in order to express our agreement in our day-to-day life? So agreement. So how to express our agreement towards someone? Then we can use these are the important sentences. Okay, maybe you have got point there. Okay, maybe you have got point there. I think you are right. I think you are right. Yes, definitely. Yes, definitely. I agree with you. I agree with you. That's right. That's right. Exactly. Exactly. Absolutely. Definitely. Of course. Of course. Absolutely. So these are the wonderful expressions that we can use some of the sentences or phrases in order to express our agreement or disagreement. So in order to express our agreement, we must learn some of the sentences or phrases that can express our disagreement towards somebody. In the same way, as well as we have to learn some of the important sentences or phrases in order to express our agreement about something towards someone. So we must learn some important phrases and sentences. Thank you very much.